Wicked Game, Gianluca Piredda, and Michael Hudson. Bad news always comes in moments of calm, when you least expect it. It's like some kind of wicked game of fate. But the truth is, bad omens just seem to expect you to be in a state of total relaxation before they break into your life. It doesn't matter if it's pouring down rain or if the sun is hot enough to crack rocks. The important thing to bad news when it comes one's way is that it catches you when everything is calm, quiet, and you're at peace with yourself and the world. You are, somehow, never prepared for the fateful phone call when it comes. Tom Tucker knew that. That night it rained. The phone made 3 long rings, while Tucker opened the refrigerator searching for something cold to drink. He located a bottle of San Pellegrino, grabbed it, and took it with him to pick up the receiver. He was prepared to answer a call from his wife, Tricia, with the most romantic hello he had in his repertoire. He was sure it was her calling. Her parents had recently arrived in the city, and she was doing a whirlwind tour with them of New York City's finest tourist sites. There was plenty to see, and one weekend would not be enough. He knew that Trish would take them to eat at Central Park's Tavern on the Green. That was a special place to Tom and to Tricia. It was there that Tom had given her an orchid, Tricia's favorite flower, and linked to the flower was a diamond ring that he had bought her only a few hours before. It was there that he proposed, and more importantly to Tom, that she gave him the yes that would forever change his life. She was probably calling just to let him know that she'd be late because of the rain and the difficulty in finding a taxi. Tom picked up the receiver and said, "Hello," to the most beautiful girl in the whole wide world. The line was quiet for a couple of beats, and it wasn't Tricia, but a man's voice that replied, "Hello, Tom Tucker." Tom's initial thought was that he'd just made a total fool of himself, but the thought was fleeting, as the voice continued without waiting for a reply. The man on the other end of the phone line spoke slowly, and what he had to say sounded confusing and unreal to Tom's ears. He said, "I can show you a photograph of the man who's going to kill you." The water bottle slipped from Tom's hand, and suddenly all the calmness was gone from Tom's life. The gentle rain against the windows now became a violent hammering on the panes as well as inside his head. White flashes of electricity lit up the windows, followed by the boom of thunder. Tom's temples began to pulse. His stomach turned to knots as his breath became ragged and seemed to stick in his throat. The water bottle lay on its side, empty. Tom ignored the cool dampness under his bare feet. The man's words hung in his mind, and they would not let go. "I can show you a photograph of the man who's going to kill you." "What the?" Tom exclaimed. "Is this some kind of gag? You just dropped a bottle of San Pellegrino, and now you're standing in it," came the reply. It had to be a joke, right? How could it be anything else, thought Tom. Why am I wasting my time with this asshole? Hang up. Just hang up the bloody phone. Trish will be home soon. I'll tell her all about it. We'll have a few laughs, watch a movie, and go to bed. But Tom didn't hang up, and the man on the other end of the line seemed to read his mind. Tom silently listened as the deep, smooth voice said, "Don't do anything stupid, Tucker. Listen to me and follow my directions to the letter. Do you understand?" "Answer me, Tucker." "Yes, I understand, but who the hell—" "Shut up, Tucker, and listen. You meet me at the Lenox Lounge at 288 Lenox Avenue. That's in Harlem, Tucker. You be there at 8 o'clock, sharp. Ask for Mac at the bar. Do you understand me, Tucker?" "Yeah, I got it. The Lenox Lounge." There was a click, and the line went dead. Tom Tucker didn't frequent bars, and he wasn't quite sure why he made the 45-minute drive in pouring down rain to show up at the Lenox. He just made it, too. It was 7:58 when he walked in the door. The place was packed with people. Maybe that's why Mac picked it, to go unnoticed. Tom could hear the hum of the air handlers above the din of the crowd, but the air was still thick with ribbons of blue-tinged smoke. A potpourri of perfumes, colognes, sweat, and alcohol hung in the air like a wet blanket. Tom made his way to the bar, and when he finally got one of the bartenders to look his way, he ordered a beer and casually asked for Mac. The bartender opened a Heineken, sat it down on a napkin, took the 5 Tom handed him, and motioned with his head to the end of the bar. He turned to another customer. There was no glass offered, and no change either. Tom saw a man sitting by himself at the very end of the bar, close to the kitchen entrance. He wore a tan trench coat, and he sported a dark gray felt hat that shadowed his face. He was still wet, which meant he hadn't been there long. He smoked, and though the cloud mingled with all the other smoke in the room, it seemed to hang over the man in an ominous fashion, obscuring a face that had been wizened by years of hard living. Tom picked up his beer and went around to approach the man. "Excuse me, are you Mac?" The man may have looked at him, but if he did, it was impossible to tell, because his head didn't move, and with the shadow and smoke, he could just as well have been the invisible man. But the man did speak, and it was the same voice as on the phone. He said, "Glad you could make it, Tucker." The man had his hands covering a photograph that lay on the bar. He slid the photograph over towards Tom, who looked down at it without touching it. "This is the guy?" Tom asked, flaunting a complacency he had left at home over an hour ago. The man nodded. Tom picked up the photo. His hands were shaking, but Mac seemed to be giving him the photo, and he figured since he'd come this far, he might as well continue the game, whatever it was. He sighed as he looked at the obviously candid headshot of an average guy with a round face and a rosy-colored complexion. The photo captured the guy in a semi-profile pose, his head awkwardly to one side. Was it taken this way to make it easier to distinguish the small upward-pointed nose and that annoying grin? Tom thought the guy resembled a pig. At any other time, he would have found the photo to be funny, but at that moment, he couldn't see anything funny about it. What he saw was the face of a fat man who, according to Mac here, wanted him dead. The only sensible question was, why? "I don't know," said Tom, in the hope that the man with the still dripping hat would tell him that it was all a big misunderstanding or even some kind of gag. "I don't understand why this man, whoever he is, would want me dead. I've done nothing wrong." "I know," confirmed the mysterious interlocutor as he pulled another puff of smoke deep into his lungs. "In fact, he was hired by us to kill you." "What?" Tom started to turn, driven by a fit of rage that faded immediately after the man calmly nodded and said, "Look, no one has anything against you, Tucker. My friends and me, we made a bet. We wondered what kind of survival instinct a good man like you possesses. Oh, we've had our eyes on you for a while, and we've observed much, you know." The man's words, while repulsive to Tom, also seemed to tickle his ego deep down inside, and yet he remained unabashedly puzzled. The man called Mac continued, "You have a beautiful wife. You lead a simple life despite your wealth. We could not find anything against you, not even things you think others don't know about you. We know. And what we know is that you are valued and appreciated by your wife, your friends, and your co-workers. Hell, you're a man to be admired, Tucker. So you see, you are perfect." "Perfect for what?" Tom knew that the answer would not be one he liked, but he still had to ask. "For our little game," the man replied, as if speaking of one of the most natural things in the world. "A game? You pay someone to kill me, and you and your cronies call it a game? Listen to me. It's not as you think. I'm giving you a way out." He motioned to the bartender, who brought 2 shots over. The man thanked the waiter with a nod, handed him a 5, and then pushed one of the shots over to Tom. Both men picked up the drinks and took them down fast. Tom winced and sat his glass down hard. A couple of people at the bar looked his way. Mac smiled and nodded to the onlookers as if to say, "Don't pay any attention to him." The tension was rising. Tom was to be the point guard of a game that he didn't want any part of, and still he didn't know the rules of the game. He had no idea how or when the game would begin and, most importantly, who would win. In fact, he didn't care. All he wanted was to turn around, leave the Lenox Lounge, go home, and forget this ever happened. But he couldn't. Somewhere out there was a fat-faced pig ready to score points with Tom's life. At the moment he was trapped, and he figured it was worth his time to wait and let the man with the hat continue his story. So it was. The man wiped his mouth with a white handkerchief and went on. You see, I told you that my friends and I are interested in understanding how a good man like you, so attached to your education and principles, can crumple when you are placed in a life-or-death survival situation, and to find out we've hired a killer to stalk you, to torment you in a cat-and-mouse game, until we tire of it and you're dead. I showed you this photograph to level the playing field a bit. Now you know someone is after you, and will eventually kill you, and you know exactly what he looks like. It's up to you to decide if you will surrender to your eventual fate, or will you rebel and kill before being killed. I assure you there is no deception with regards to you. Indeed, the only one who is being deceived is the killer himself, who does not know of our little meeting. It's perfect, don't you think? The man let out a hearty laugh. Tom did not feel like laughing, and instead he stood and stared at the man. Anger welled up within him, and his voice cracked a bit as he said, You and your club of friends, you're all crazy. Do you not realize the absurdity of this situation? If it's a joke, it's time to let me in on it. Laugh together and end it. The man stood up to leave, not at all worried by the tone of Tom's voice and his words. As he turned, he stopped short and blew a long trail of smoke upwards. You are free to believe or not to believe my story. If you want, you can go to the police, but they will not believe you. The only advice I can give you is to keep your eyes open. The killer is not that far away from you. It's a matter of days, perhaps only hours. Keep your eyes open. The stakes are high. It's your life at stake. Tom Tucker remained standing as he watched the man lower the brim of his hat and walk away. He watched him disappear into the crowd and leave the crowded room. The last words from Mac were like ice. Tom still held the photo of his to-be killer between his index finger and thumb. How would this game change his life? Will he be the victor, or would it cost him his life? When Tom got home, it was after 11, and Tricia was already in bed. He had never lied to his wife, but this time he had to do it. He couldn't go to her and tell her that he had spent the last few hours in a bar talking to a guy who called himself Mac, talking about Tom's own pending murder. The thought of lying to Trish made him feel sick, but there was no way he could burden her with this kind of fantastical, horrific news. He took off his shoes and wet clothes in the bathroom and crept into the room quietly, on tiptoe. Putting his coat in a chair next to his side of the bed, he sat on the mattress. Bad day? He turned. Tricia stretched. She was sleepy and beautiful in her black negligee. Tom smiled, looking down at the girl who held the key to his heart. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up as he realized he would have to answer her questions, and that he would have to betray her trust. That made it difficult to look into her eyes. That guy Mac was right about one thing. Tom Tucker was a good man. His wife adored him, and he loved her back. Every little gesture of sincerity was a betrayal, even a lie to protect her. There was no malice in his heart, but it was still a secret, and as such it created a small sense of alienation from the woman he loved so dearly. Wyatt screwed things up in the newsroom. There was a huge problem with photos. We were on a deadline, and he told me to take a flying leap. Sweetheart, you know how typical these matters are at the newsroom. They come 1 minute, and then they are over with the next. It's just the pressure of working under such demanding time constraints. It affects all of you. Hey, it's over. You know you need to learn to let them unravel these matters on their own, she said, caressing his back. Tom's excuse did hold roots. Wyatt was known to be a troublemaker, and Tom had done him unlimited favors, bailing him out time and time again. and there really was an altercation with him at work today. He was certain that the lie, no, really a partial truth, would cover Trish's curiosity, but he knew it would probably lead him to having to invent another lie, and this annoyed him. The castle stood on the foundation stones on which it was built, and frankly his story to Trish was one he didn't like, even if it was the only thing he could do. In response, he shrugged. He stretched his neck from side to side to undo the stress and lay down. Trish approached his side of the bed. "Poor baby. Come here and cuddle with me," she said. Tricia took him in her arms and rolled him onto herself. Tom kissed her long and deep. His biceps flexed and his back arched as he entered into the depths of her womanhood. He did it as if it were the last time, as if it were the source of a long life that now waned, the panacea to a profound evil that came from the soul. And it worked. For a moment, he forgot the man with the hat and his poisonous cloud of smoke. He forgot about the fat-faced pig and that photograph he had in his jacket's breast pocket. He forgot about the thought of dying at the hands of a whacked-out stranger, or having to find a way out of this mess. He also put away his lie to Trish. All these things became distant thoughts as he held and made love to his beautiful and willing wife. He rolled her on top. Trish's skin held the scent of almonds, and it intoxicated him as her long black hair cascaded down onto his chest. She leaned forward, and he took her earlobe between his lips and kissed her neck, the better to smell the scent of her perfume. The lovemaking eased his anxiety, and the tightness in his stomach became less as she carried him far away from his troubles. His breathing increased rapidly, but it was in harmony with Trish's. Afterward, his heart slowed, and a sense of peace came over his being. Tom would have loved to die right then, because the serenity of the moment was so intense, and he could not imagine a better place, if not beside her. "Damn, that was good," she purred. "You know, you force me into having such a potty mouth at times, my husband." She kissed him deeply, long, and hugged him. A strange force ran through Tom's veins, and it led him to hold her tighter. Tricia did not mind. She groaned with pleasure. Tom's thoughts to himself were not true. He could die now, but he would not do it with serenity. He didn't want to die because he wanted many more of those special moments with Trish. He was just 36, and he still deserved a lifetime of kisses from her. He wanted to live as many years as God would provide with this woman by his side. Whatever she did made him smile and brought peace into his existence. He had promised her long ago that he would never abandon her, and that meant he was not going to let a killer make him break his word. That night, Tom Tucker did not sleep at all. He made love as he had never done before. The horrible truth was it could be for the last time. Tom planned to live, but he took for granted that defeat might come his way. He wondered if this evening was like the last meal of the accused before the dawn comes, that final night of perfect calm before the harbinger of bad news comes knocking at one's door. In the dark now, he wasn't afraid. His thoughts were far away. In his mind, there was only Tricia, his Tricia, and he could think of nothing better to carry him through the hours of darkness.